I see too often stories about transgender people and the treatment that they change the stories people tell and the terminology so that it's misleading.
I am Susanna Viljanmaa and I define myself as a transgender woman.
I've been assigned male at birth and I transitioned into a woman a few years ago. A transgender person is someone who doesn't identify the gender they were assigned at birth. For example, if someone was assigned male at birth and they identify as a woman, but not always that. There are people who don't identify either male or female, so they are usually non-binary or agender. In Finland, the status of transgender people are quite well done and people are able to change their juridical gender, but they are not expected to be able to reproduce anymore. So you need to have a document that proves that you're not able to reproduce, and you need the approval of 2 psychiatrists that you are really transgender and you have lived as the experienced gender for 1 year. And the employee is not able to fire or discriminate anyone from their experienced gender. Usually the youth are the most insecure because if you're underage, it's not possible to change your legal gender anyway. Underage people can't have any type of surgery, and usually the organizations and associations are okay with that. But sometimes underage people can take hormones, and adult people who are transgender can have surgery. For example, if you're transmasculine, you can have your breasts removed surgically, and after you have the approval of 2 psychiatrists that you can have the general surgery. And sometimes trans women can have breast augmentation if they are having their gender reassignment process in Tampere region. For some reason, offer that in the Helsinki region. There are only 2 clinics, Helsinki and Tampere, that provide the healthcare for transgender people. And the law doesn't require, but somehow it's just done by public healthcare, so private healthcare companies don't offer that. The most violence that transgender people experience is verbal. For example, the first year that I came out, I got multiple instances of harassment on the street every day. After 1 year, it almost disappeared completely. And sometimes people experience physical abuse. And for example, transgender women quite often don't get any other work than sex work. And if you do sex work, it's quite difficult in Finland because we have the laws that try to remove the human trafficking, but they make it illegal to offer housing for people to do sex work, so they have to do them at their homes, and they are more at risk. And if you do sex work, you may have clients that are quite physically abusive. And until last summer, I was feeling that when at least transgender women aren't murdered in Finland, but last summer the first transgender woman was murdered, and she used to be a sex worker as well. And that wasn't the only problem. The police and the newspapers reported that it was just a knife fight between 2 men, even though it was a transgender woman who had lived more than 10 years as a woman. But somehow she couldn't have her judicial gender changed. I see too often stories about transgender people and the treatment that they change the stories people tell and the terminology so that it's misleading. For example, the whole process is just changed into the one surgery. So we just want to identify as the other gender and go through the operation. That was it. It's not like that, and we have to have treatment for several years. First, we have to live a year as the experienced gender or the identified gender. So that's a re-love test. And after that, we can have the legal gender changed. And after that, we can get to the gender reassignment surgery, or in other words, the genital surgery, a queue. And usually that's a 1 year queue, and you might get delayed there. For example, I got 2 delays, and it took me 2 years until I got there. So for a minimum, it's usually 3 years. I've heard that some people have had physical violence. I have been quite lucky in the sense that I never experienced any physical violence, but I've been chased on the streets, and the verbal abuse has been prevalent, and I have been sexually harassed even at the workplace by my superior and a member of the board. Equality laws require that the employees have to find a way to ensure that you can live as your experienced gender. For example, locker rooms. If they can't put you to the correct locker room, they have to offer you a single serving room or a private locker room. For example, quite a lot of harassment at the men's locker room at the beginning, and somehow I didn't feel that I would be in the right place to be in the women's locker room, because I had faced sexual abuse and I was afraid that the women over there would feel unsafe me being over there. But fortunately my employee moved to another location that had 2 women's locker rooms, so I could just pick one, and if some woman would have a trouble with me being over there, she could just pick the other room and she wouldn't need to be telling that to any other people. But it turned out that nobody seemed to have any problem with me at all. And a friend of mine, for example, went to a women's toilet. She had gone through all the process, but she had the trouble that people saw her being transgender, and some woman tried to prevent her going into the women's toilet, and she panicked and she just pulled her pants down, saying that, how can I go to the men's room like this? And the woman who tried to prevent her going there just panicked and went away. And I hear too many stories like these. Quite often I forget to talk about the troubles of non-binary people, because I'm binary woman, but not other people always identify like that, and too often they face discrimination in either locker rooms or toilets of the binary gender, and they have to pick a gender which is too difficult for them. And it would be better if places would have gender-neutral toilets or locker rooms, if possible, for them. And too often I see some questionnaires or other forms that require you to select a binary gender.